Here are the steps you need to follow. Filing a past due return is basically the same as filing your return on time, with a few important differences. So let me just break it down for you. First, you want to gather all of your documents. Very important. So I want you to gather your 1099, your W-2, if you have pay stubs, your bank statements, everything that can contribute to telling you your income information on your expenses. I want you to gather that. So whenever you file a return, you will need all the forms that show your income for the tax year you are filing for. Are you filing for last year? Okay, go ahead and just get all the paperwork for last year. Are you filing for a tax return 2 years ago? Well, go ahead and see if you can get something. In some cases, if you don't have the physical paper, you can always obtain the electronic version of that document. So you can contact, for example, your company's payroll processor. If you're trying to get a W-2, nowadays what's really good is that a lot of companies are saving all information on the cloud, so you don't have to actually get if you don't have the paper form of your W-2 or 1099, just contact your employer or contact the company that you work with and just ask them. They'll send you a secure link, and it's actually a secure link. You click on that, you'll be redirected to a page where you actually can download the information you need. Okay, so for example, you're filing a tax return for the year 2022 and 2021. You will need any W-2s, 1099s, interest statements, and other types of income statements that apply to that year, 2021. Hopefully, you saved those documents in a tax record file. And if you are missing information, you can request a wage and income transcript from the IRS for a previous year. It's called wage and income transcript. So the transcript will basically show all the information returns the IRS received on your behalf for that tax year, such as the W-2s, 1099s, 1098s, IRA contributions you made, and more. And this is because the IRS always receives one copy of any documents that you receive. And if you're claiming certain deductions or tax credits, you will need to have all the necessary documentation, such as receipts for medical expenses or mortgage interest you paid during the tax year. So it's always important, if you want to file back taxes, to have the required substantiation for the expenses you are actually claiming on your return. Step number 1, gather all your documents. Step number 2, you want to download the tax forms you need. Welcome back to the channel, by the way. It's really wonderful to have you here. We're having conversations about how to file back taxes yourself. Okay, so when we talk about downloading the tax form you need, I just said this before, but I'm going to say it again. You want to go to the IRS website to download tax forms for the year you need to file. And the thing is, you have to be very clear about the specific year you are filing for, because forms can change from year to year. So again, be sure you are using the correct one. For example, the IRS significantly revised Form 1040, which is the main form for individual income taxes, in 2018. So before 2018, all the 1040 forms were kind of similar, but in 2018 they had a significant revision. And so the new form replaced the old 1040 Easy and 1040A versions, and moved a lot of information off the form and onto additional schedules. So one thing you want to do here is, when you think about downloading the tax forms you need, you can actually do it manually. You can go to the IRS website and download the form, or if you are lucky to have, let's say, the tax year, if the tax year that you want to file for is not too far away, you can actually use tax preparation software. And so this basically saves you time and energy when it comes to downloading any tax form, because the software will have the appropriate tax form for the year that you are filing for. Let's say if you are filing for the year 2016 or 2017, if you have a tax preparation platform that allows you to file taxes for that year, what will happen here is that they'll have the appropriate tax forms right away. So all you have to do is just to enter your information and to make sure that you have the appropriate records and receipts and whatnot, so that if the IRS were to audit you, they know that you have the paperwork. Okay, so our preference, this is what we tell all of our clients, it's just better to file. If you want to file back taxes, it's better to do it online or to do it through a tax preparation software. But if it's not possible, then you have to do things manually. Then continue listening to this show. So step number 1, gather all your documents. Step number 2, you want to download the tax forms you need. Step number 3, you want to complete and mail the forms and pay anything you owe. So basically, just want to quickly remind everybody of today's topic. We're having a conversation today about how to file back taxes yourself. And so you may be able to use an online tax preparation service, as I just said, to complete the forms, but you will not be able to e-file your back tax return. Okay, this is a condition that the IRS has put in place to make sure that the taxpayer himself or herself contacts the agency. So, for example, this year, when you're filing your taxes for last year, you can actually e-file, not a problem. But if you want to go back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, you will not be able to e-file your return for that specific year. Okay, your back tax return. You need to print out and mail the forms to the address listed in the Form 1040 instructions for the tax year you are filing. And please keep in mind those instructions change all the time, so make sure you have the latest. If you need help, please just drop your questions below. We'll be very happy to assist you. We can direct you to the right page, to the right IRS pages where you have all the information. And based on your state and state of residence, we'll be able to tell you which IRS address to send your back tax return to. And so if you are not sure how to proceed, it's always great to have a tax professional help you. Now, the thing is, you don't really need a tax professional if you have a simple tax return. But if you have a complicated tax return, or your financial situation is just a little complicated, it's just better to hire someone. Okay, and this could be a CPA, a certified public accountant. This could be an EA, an enrolled agent. This could be a tax attorney. This could be a tax planner. So it really depends. You just want to enlist the help of a professional. Okay, this is important. Now, you can also get free assistance from the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant or Tax Counseling for the Elderly program. So the IRS has some programs in place whereby they assist taxpayers who need help when it comes to filing their taxes, not only their current year tax return or their back tax returns. Okay, and if you have a tax liability, back taxes, penalties, and interest, you will need to pay it or request a payment plan. And we have actually covered the payment plan topic on another show. But I'm just saying that there are options. Okay, there are always options, by the way. The big question is, why should you file back taxes? The thing is, it's against the law not to file a return for a tax year when you are obligated to file. In other words, you have made money and you have quote unquote forgotten to send the IRS its fair share of your income. Okay, and there are other compelling reasons to file and pay back taxes. First, if you file back taxes, you're minimizing penalties and interest. Keep in mind, the IRS can penalize you if you don't file a return or pay any tax you owe by the deadline. Generally, the penalty for not filing is more than the penalty for not paying. This is why we always say on this show, it's important to file. Even if you don't have the cash to pay, okay, at least you filed. You may also be charged interest on any unpaid tax balance. So filing your back taxes and paying anything you owe may help limit the amount of interest and penalties you are subject to for missing the deadline. That's the first option. That's the first reason why you want to file back taxes. So you want to minimize penalties and interest. The second reason why you might want to file back taxes is to claim a tax refund. So if you are owed a refund for a particular tax year but neglected to file, it's quite essential to know that you have a limited time, 3 years from the original due date of the return, to file your back tax return and still be eligible to claim your refund. Keep in mind that if you file a return for the current year and are due a refund, the IRS may hold on to that refund if you have any past due returns you haven't filed yet. So the IRS is constantly looking at what they owe you versus what you might owe them. Okay, so the thing is, if you don't file a return at all, then they have no idea how much you owe them. This is why, as I said before, it's always important, always advisable to file a tax return. At least the IRS knows, okay, this person owes us $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 or $1 grand, but he or she doesn't just doesn't have the money. Okay, so if you don't have the money to pay them, they know how much you owe them, so they'll just charge you interest. Okay, they charge you interest, and that's a lot better than not filing at all. Because if the IRS were to prepare a return for you, they might actually not take the right deductions for you, which will result in a higher tax liability. I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We're still having a conversation about how to file back taxes yourself. So why should you file back taxes? First, minimize penalties and interest. 2, claim a tax refund. 3, you want to prevent a possible credit obstacle. The thing you have to understand here is that tax returns may play a role in credit decisions. Lenders might ask you for copies of your filed tax returns. And if you are missing a return for a year when you should have filed, your loan processing could possibly be delayed. And we have this a lot when it comes to mortgages and car payment and car loans. So in other words, in those loans that have a significant and long-term implication, a mortgage 30 years, a car loan we're looking at 8 years or 9 years. So this is really important. And even for regular loans, they might ask you for your tax returns. And in some transactions, in some business funding transactions, let's say even business credit card, the card issuer might ask to see your personal tax returns. Okay, for them it's just important to actually make sure that you are a compliant taxpayer. So if you don't have none of those, or you're missing an important year in your lineup of tax returns, your loan could be even denied. And you also want to file back taxes to preserve your passports. And this is one thing a lot of folks don't know about, that if you owe more than $51,000 in taxes, penalties, and interest, the IRS will notify the U.S. State Department, which in turn can deny your application for a new or renewed passports. Okay, so this is something that's now, for some people this is not really important because they don't care about traveling anyway, and they're not even thinking about traveling overseas anyway. But if you are someone who cares about your passport, and you know that, hey, listen, I have a business trip, or I have a trip, a private trip coming up, please pay your taxes. In any way, you're not paying taxes simply because you want to have your passport. It's just because it's basically the law, and everybody has to pay taxes. So pay your fair share. Okay. The State Department may also revoke your passport if you owe a lot of cash to the IRS. So remember, IRS, State Department, they're part of the same Uncle Sam. Okay, really. So please pay your taxes. Let's talk about what could possibly happen if you don't file back taxes. A lot of things can happen. If you don't file a tax return for a year, or when you should have filed, or don't pay federal income tax you owe, the IRS can take action. The agency may send you a notice or a bill, or it may file a return on your behalf and might not bother to give you any tax breaks you are eligible for. And you don't really want that. Nobody wants that. Remember, the IRS can easily do this because it likely already has your income information from your employer, customers you do gig work for if you're self-employed, banks, and other sources, because they would have sent to the agency Form 1099 NEC, 1099 miscellaneous, Form W, not the Form W2, yeah, W2 forms. Okay, and so it's really important. Now, additionally, federal law generally allows the IRS to try to collect on a tax debt for 10 years, though there can be exceptions. So what if you owe more than you can pay? If you are facing a tax bill you cannot afford to pay in full right away, you may have payment options. And we have covered this on other shows. You want to consider paying the IRS with a credit card or personal loan. So using credit to pay your tax debt likely means you will pay interest to the lender. But those costs may be less than the penalties and interest you might face if you fail to pay the IRS on time and in full. If you owe $50,000 or less, you can request an online payment agreement from the IRS. Short-term installment agreements give you 120 days or less to pay. A long-term agreement can give you up to 72 months, that's 6 years, to pay what you owe in monthly payments. And the cool thing is, if you meet certain criteria, you may be able to ask the IRS for something called an offer in compromise, an OIC, which could allow you to settle your tax debt for less than what you owe. In dire cases, when paying anything might prevent you from covering your basic life expenses, the IRS may agree to temporarily delay collection of your past due tax debt. So there are always options, and I'm just telling you things that could happen if you don't file your back taxes, and none of those is good for you anyway. So please file your back taxes. Before I close today's conversation, let's have a perspective analysis, okay? And obviously things happened in the past, that's why you couldn't file your taxes on time, and now you have to file back taxes. Okay, that's the past. That's retrospective, that's retroactive. Let's talk perspective, let's talk about the future. Next steps. How do you plan ahead for next year? Well, filing accurate tax returns by the filing deadline and paying all the tax you owe on time goes a long way to help you avoid problems with the IRS. So we're speaking about filing your taxes by April 15th. Don't wait to clear up your back taxes before getting a jump start on this year's tax return. You want to start a file, for example, start a file for all your tax documents, such as, let's say, income statements from your employer, interest statements from your bank, or receipts for deductible expenses you hope to itemize. This is why we always say, listen, during the year, what you do is you actually keep two things. You keep a folder where you file all the receipts and all the evidence that you have spent money on something, and then you need to have simultaneously an Excel spreadsheet that actually tracks your expenses. So on one side you have the backup, you have the evidence. On the other side you have the actual numbers. And this is how you track things throughout the year, especially if you want to itemize. If you just want to take the standard deduction, then it's fine. But if you want to itemize your deductions, then you need to have proof. Okay. And so the thing I want to say here is that make sure that you can actually go to the IRS website. They have a wonderful tool. We use it all the time. It's called the IRS Tax Withholding Estimator to help ensure you are having the right amount of tax withheld from your paycheck. Because the last thing you want is at the end of the year realizing that your employer took less from your paycheck than they should have. So now you're finding yourself having to face a huge tax bill, which you cannot afford to pay right away. So please, if you want to increase the amount of taxes they withdraw from your paycheck from every 2 weeks, then go on the IRS website and download the right form. Okay. And so it's one thing I want to say here is that make sure that they take more than they should, because what could be worse? Well, if you withhold more than the necessary, you could get a refund next year, and a refund is always better than having a tax penalty anyway. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I was just talking to you about how to file back taxes yourself. So we spoke about the steps: gather all documents, download the tax forms you need, complete and mail the forms, and pay anything you owe. And why you should file back taxes? Well, to minimize, and you want to minimize penalties and interest. You want to claim a tax refund. You want to prevent a possible credit obstacle. You want to preserve your passport. Okay. And what could happen if you don't file back taxes? Well, listen, you might be in trouble anyway. Thank you so much. I will see you next time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.